Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. My travels began on May the 4th, 1699. I said goodbye to my wife and 2 children and set sail from Bristol, a ship's doctor bound for the South Seas. All went well for the first few weeks. Then there was a bad storm and the ship was wrecked. 6 of the crew, of whom I was one, got into a little boat and began to row to an island nearby. Suddenly, a huge wave upset the boat, and all the other men were lost. Only I, Lemuel Gulliver, was left. I swam as long as I could, and at last, just as I could swim no more, my feet touched the bottom. I waded through the water to the shore, where there was no sign of houses or people. I walked about a half a mile further, but still saw no one. Tired out, I lay down on the short, soft grass and went to sleep. When I woke up, it was daylight. I lay still for a moment, wondering where I was, then tried to get up. I could not move my arms, or my legs, or my head. I was tied to the ground. There was a buzzing noise near me, but I could not see what was making it. Suddenly, I felt something moving on my left leg. It walked up me and stopped close by my chin. I looked down as well as I could, for my hair was tied to the ground, and saw a tiny man, less than 6 inches high, with a bow and arrow in his hand. Then many more of these little men started to run all over me. I was so surprised that I roared loudly. They ran back in a fright and fell over one another trying to get away. I found out later that some of them had hurt themselves when they fell from my chest. I managed to break the strings that tied my left arm to the ground and pulled some of my hair loose so that I could move my head. This made the little men even more afraid, and they shot arrows at me. Some fell on my hands and some on my face, pricking me like needles and making my skin sore wherever they landed. The little men stood around at a distance, watching me. After a while, when they saw I was not going to hurt them, they cut some of the strings that bound me. This at least allowed me to move my head more. Now I could see that they had built a little platform beside my head so that their emperor could talk to me. He spoke for some time, but I could not understand him, and I began to grow hungry. I pointed to my mouth and pretended to chew. He seemed to understand, and at once sent some of his men to bring me food and drink. Ladders were put up against my sides, and over 100 of the little men climbed up, bringing baskets full of meat and bread. Each piece of meat was the size of one small piece of mince, so that I had to keep asking for more. The loaves were so tiny that I ate 3 at a time. I drank a whole barrel of their wine at a gulp. They kept looking at each other as if they could not believe it was possible to drink so much, but they brought me some more wine, which I drank. I made signs to let them know I would not try to escape, and they loosened the strings so that I could turn on my side. They also put some ointment on my face and hands, which took away the soreness their arrows had caused. Then I fell asleep again. When I woke up, I found myself on a kind of platform with wheels. It was moving towards the capital city of these tiny people, about half a mile away. 1,500 of the emperor's largest horses, each about as big as my hand, were pulling me along. I later found out that it had taken 500 carpenters and engineers to make this platform, and no less than 900 men to put me onto it while I was still asleep. For some time, I did not know what had wakened me. I was told later, however, that some of the young people wanted to see how I looked when I was asleep. They climbed up onto the platform and walked very softly up to my face. One of them, An officer in the guards put the sharp end of his spear up into my nose, which tickled my nose like a straw and made me sneeze, waking me up. They ran away quickly before I caught sight of them. We made a long march for the remainder of that day and rested at night. They put 500 guards on each side of me, ready to shoot me if I tried to escape. At last we arrived at the capital city. The platform to which I was tied stopped outside a church which was no longer used. Since this was the largest building in the whole country, the emperor had planned that I should live there. The door was just big enough for me to creep through when I wanted to sleep. Once inside, I could only lie down. The little men would not let me go free, however. They put nearly 100 of their tiny chains round my left leg, so that although I could stand up, I could not move very far. When this was done, the emperor came to see me. He carried in his hand a sword about as big as one of our darning needles to defend himself if I should break loose. He was a handsome little man, much taller than the rest of his court who were with him, and he wore a gold helmet with a plume on the crest. All the ladies and gentlemen of the court were dressed in gold and silver, which flashed in the sun. I tried to answer the emperor when he spoke to me, but he could not understand any of the many languages which I speak. Soon he went away to decide whether he would have to have me killed or not, for I would cost a great deal to feed and might be dangerous. After the emperor had gone away, a great crowd of the tiny people came to see me because none of them had ever seen such a big person before. Some of the men shot arrows at me, and one just missed my eye. The guards tied these men up and gave them to me to punish. I put 5 of them in my pocket and pretended I was going to eat the other one, who was very frightened. Then I took out my penknife and cut the cords that bound him and set him on the ground. I treated the other 5 in the same way, taking them one by one out of my pocket. Everyone was very surprised to see me treat them so gently. 2 of the guards went to the emperor to tell him what I had done. He decided that since I had been kind to his people, he would not have me killed. He ordered people who lived close to the town to bring me 6 cows and 40 sheep every day, and wine to drink. This was only just enough for me, since everything was so tiny. 300 tailors were told to make clothes for me, and 600 of the little people were to look after me. They were to live in tents outside the church to make it easier for them. Lastly, 6 men were to teach me their language. 3 weeks later, I was able to understand and talk to the little men. The first thing I asked the emperor was to set me free. He said that they must first see if I was carrying anything that could be a danger to his people. 2 men came to look through my pockets and wrote down everything they found. They gave me a new name, the Great Man Mountain. In my pockets they found a handkerchief, which they thought was like a carpet, a snuff box, which they called a chest filled with dust. It made them sneeze. A notebook in which they recognized very large writing. A comb. They knew what this was for, but said it looked like the railings round the emperor's palace. A knife, a razor, and a pair of pistols. All these things were new to them, and they could not think what they were for. A watch. They said it made a noise like a watermill. They thought it must be a god which I worshipped, because I told them I always looked at it before I did anything. A purse. They called this a net, large enough for a fisherman, but they knew I used it as a purse. They were very surprised at the size of the gold pieces in my purse. the two little men had finished looking in my pockets, they looked at my belt. They wrote down that I had a sword as long as 5 men, and a pouch with 2 pockets. One of these pockets held black powder, the other very heavy round balls. They took their list to the Emperor, who asked me to take out my sword and put it carefully on the ground. Then he asked me what my pistols were for. I told him not to be afraid, and I fired one of them in the air. Everyone fell down in fright, except the Emperor, although he too went very white. He made me give up my pistols at once. I did so, telling him that the black powder must be kept away from fire because it was very dangerous. All my things were put away in the Emperor's storeroom, except for my eyeglasses, which were in a pocket the men had not found. Slowly, the Emperor and his people came to understand that they were in no danger from me. From time to time, some of them would dance on my hand, and the boys and girls liked to play hide-and-seek in my hair as I lay on the ground. Even the horses stopped being afraid of me, and horses and riders would take turns to leap over my hand as I held it on the ground.